Welcome everyone. Today we have another new discussions on supply and demand and supply model. Economists believe there are a small number of fundamental principles that explain how economic agent responds in different situations. Two of these principles are the law of demand and supply. Government can pass law affect market outcome, but no law can negates this economic principle. The law of supply and demand often become apparent in sometimes unexpected ways, which may undermine the internet of government policy. Price challenges. A legal maximum price for a product keeps a price from rising above a certain level, the ceiling. Government typically set a price ceiling to protect consumer by making necessary product affordable. But you will come to see how this sometimes backfires by creating a market shortage. Consumer who are also potential voters sometimes until behave a political proposal to hold down a certain price. Ceiling. Five major consequences of the price ceilings. There is a shortage, reduce quality, quality, waste time and resources, deadline and resources, dead weight loss, or a loss of gain from trade, misallocations of resources. These are the different kind of challenges actually naturally we face. And when there is a supply and demand curve and there is a price selling here, and this is the excess demand of or shortage from price floor. Price floor, a legal minimum price for a product. Price floor are sometimes called price support because they support a price by preventing it from falling below a certain level. An example of a price floor is the minimum wage, which is based on the view that someone working full time should be able to affect a basic standard of living. Most common way price support work is the government enter the market and buy up the product, adding to demand to the keep price higher than they otherwise would be. Price floor. Price control. Government law to reduce price in instead of letting market force determine price. So neither price ceiling nor price floor cause damage or supply to change. They simply set a price that limits what can be legally charged in the market. Water after Katrina example. The problem originates from the fact that the damage for the good increased suddenly and dramatically. The question is how to deal with the shortage, how to allocate the limited supply of bottled water among competing needs and wants. When a price ceiling reduces the legal price of a product, business have less incentives to supply the product. Water after Katrina example. Who get the limited supply? It could be the first come first services. It could be a friend of the sellers. In many cases, what result are under the tables payments by consumer willing to violate the law. What is certain is that less bottle wages gets to consumer than would be the case if the price were allowed to rise. Getting a good deal or making a good deals. People make transactions because they value the same goods differently at the margin. Margin analysis, comparing the benefit or cost of choosing a little more or a little less of a goods. Trade and efficiency, getting a good deals or making a good deals. Law of diminishing marginal utility. As we consume more of a good or service, the utility we get from addiction unit, the good or service, tend to become smaller than what we receive from earlier unit. Allocative efficiency, when benefit of trade are maximizing and a mix of goods being produced represent the mix that society most desire. So consumer and product supply. So there is a consumer as well as there is a product suppliers. So consumer surplus, product surplus, and social surplus. What does it mean? Consumer surplus, if we add up the gain at every quality, We can measure the consumer surplus as area under the demand curve up to equilibrium quantity and above the equilibrium price. Producer surplus, the value of producer of which sells above their cost of production. Social surplus, the sum of consumer and producer surplus at some quantity and price of output. Consumer and product surplus, the market is efficient and both consumer and producer surplus are maximized at the equilibrium point of $5. If the government establish a price ceiling, a shortage result which also cause the producer surplus to shrink and result in inefficiency called deadweight loss. Deadweight loss, the loss in social surplus that occur when a market produce an inefficient quantity. If government implement a price floor, there is a surplus in the market, the consumer surplus shrink and inefficiency produce deadweight loss. So calculate consumer surplus. Number one steps, define the base and highest of the consumer surplus triangles. Step two, apply the values for base and height to the formula for the area of a triangle. Price ceiling inefficiency. An inefficient outcome occurs and the total surplus of the society is reduced. Loss in social surplus occur when the economy produce at the inefficient quantity called deadweight loss. When deadweight loss exit, it is possible for both consumer and producer surplus to be way higher in this case because the price control is blocking some surplus and demand from the transaction that would be benefit to both. Like a law establishment rent control, it will transfer some producer surplus to consumer, which helps to explain why consumer often favor them. Price floor inefficiency. The impositions of a price floor prevent a market from adjust to its equilibrium price and quantity and will create an inefficiency outcome. Price floor will transfer some consumer surplus to producer, which explain why producer often favor them. Consumer surplus, the gap between the price that consumer are willing to pay based on their preferences and the market equilibrium price. Labor and financial market. The theories of supply and demand do not apply just the market for goods. They apply to an market, even market for labor than financial services. Labor market, supply and demand for job. Financial market, supply and demand for financial service. Example, saving and borrowing. So labors and financial market content, supply and demand labor markets. Economic events can change the equilibrium salary and quantity of labor. Example, consider how new information technologies that affect low skills and high skilled worker in the US economy. From the perspective of the employee who demand labor, these new technology are often a substitute for low skill labor like file clerk who used to keep file cabinet full of paper record of transactions. The same new technologies are a component of high skill worker like managers who benefit from the technological advantage by being able to monitor more information, communicate more easily, and judge a wide array of the responsibility. How will the new technology affect the wages of high skills and low skill worker? For these questions, use the four-step process of analyzing how shift in supply or demand affect a market. Technology and the wage inequality, the four-step process. Step one, what did the market for low skill laborers and high skill labor look like before the arrival of the new technologies? Step two, does the new technology affect the supply of labor from our household or demand for labor from firms? Step three, will the new technology increase or decrease demand? Compare the new equilibrium price and quantity of the original equilibrium price. Labor and financial market, supply demand in financial market. See how the theories of supply and demand also affect financial market. Example, imagine the US economy become viewed as a less described place for foreign investors to put their money because of fear about the growth of the US public debt. Using the four-step process for analyzing how changes in supply and demand affect equilibrium outcome. How would increase US public debt efficiency the equilibrium price and quantity for the capital in US financial market? In a modern developed economy, financial capital often moves invisibly through electronic transfer between one bank account and another. This flow of fund can be analyzed with the same tool of demand and supply as marketer for the good labor. The effect of growing US debt, the four-step process. Step 1. Draw a diagram showing demand and the supply for financial capital that represent the original scenario in which foreign investors are pouring money into the US economy. Step 2. Will the diminished confidence in the US economy as a place to invest affect demand or supply of financial capital? Step 3. Will supply increase or decrease? Step 4. Compare the new equilibrium price and quantity to the original equilibrium price. So if we do a quick review, before that we have to understand like demand and supply has some major things. Demand and supply has some major effect and major equilibrium points. And if we can understand these major equilibrium points, as well as if we take the necessary initiative, that time we can go in an effective way. And if we can go in an effective way, that time we can take the necessary initiative, and which will be helpful for our economy, which will be helpful for our growing economical impact, which will be effective for our economical sustainability. So for that particular issues, what we can get, what are the consequences of the government setting a binding price ceilings? What are the consequences of the price ceilings economy impact on price, quantity damage, and quantity shopped, supplied? How can you compute and demonstrate the market shortage result from a price ceiling? What are the consequences of the government setting a binding price floor? What are the consequences of the price floor economic impact on the price, quantity damage, and quantity supply? How do you compute and demonstrate the market surplus result from a price floor? What is the economic effect of government setting price ceilings? And 4, why does voluntary trade benefit both parties? Why does voluntary trade lead to the allocative efficiency? How can you explain, calculate, and illustrate consumer surplus? How can you explain, calculate, and illustrate product surplus? How can you explain, calculate, and illustrate social surplus? How can you explain how price floor and price ceilings lead to the allocative inefficiency and loss of social surplus? How can the theories of supply and demand be applied to the labor market? How can the theories of supply and demand be applied to financial market? What is the 4 steps predict how economic condition cause a change in supply, demand, and equilibrium? These are the few major things. These are the few major informations. Always we are trying to understand from our impacts. And if we can understand this kind of economical impact, if we can understand different kind of demand of the market and supply of the market, then we can take the necessary initiative. Let's say in the COVID-19 situation, medical equipment, medical supply, biotech related things, everything is growing very fast. On the other hand, if you see different kind of regular necessity, food, consumer goods, different kind different kind of things actually increase. On the other hand, different kind of construction projects, everything going very slow. So if it's grow very slow, and if it can taking a very kind of ineffective strategy, that time we have to be very much careful. And if we are careful, and if we can understand the effective way of like this consumer things, that times we can take the necessary initiative. And if we can take the necessary initiative, that time we can solve our problem in an effective way. And that is the ultimately the objective of School of Talent Economy. We want to teach you the real economy, real science, real engineering, and real technological aspect. And if you can understand different science, engineering, and technological aspect, that time you can go for effective way. That time you can play some important role, and that time you can do some sort of supply and demand. And when you can understand the role of supply and demand, when you can take the necessary measures, when you can take some necessary initiative, that time you can solve your problem in an effective way. So those who are here, the student of School of Talent Economy, I'm requesting everyone, please join our initiative. Try to understand the economy and economical aspect, take proper initiative in the global arena, and try to solve many problems in an effective way. If you can solve the problems and other things in an effective way, that time you can help to your community, you can help your family, you can help your society, as well as you can help your country to overcome from this crisis moment, to overcome from this pandemic situations. So I request everyone, to join School of Talent Economy, which will help you understand the demand and supply and major economical aspect. Thank you everyone, those who joined today's class. If you have any questions or anything, you just communicate with me. Thank you everyone.